The leather creaked with each sway of the horse beneath him. Rowan Hale kept his eyes on the horizon, where heat devils danced above the New Mexico grassland, making the distant mesas shimmer like water. The bay mare's breathing came steady, but something else rode the wind, a broken rhythm that didn't belong to horse or prairie. He pulled the reins gentle-like. The mare stopped, ears pricked forward. There it was again, ragged breathing trying to hide in the whisper of buffalo grass. The abandoned cattle pen stood maybe quarter-mile south, its fence posts leaning like drunken men. Place had been empty since the Garrett outfit pulled stakes 2 summers back. No reason for anyone to be there now. Rowan touched his heels to the mare's flanks. She moved forward slow, picking her way through the bunch grass and prickly pear. The breathing sound grew stronger. At the pen's entrance, he saw her. A woman, young by the look of her slight frame, stood tied to the center post. Her wrists were bound high above her head with rough hemp rope. The position forced her up on her toes. A wooden board hung from her neck by twine. The letters carved crude, "Law takes what belongs to others." Rowan swung down from the saddle in one motion, pulling his knife from the sheath at his belt. The woman's eyes tracked his movement. Green eyes in a dust-caked face. She didn't speak, just watched him approach with the careful attention of a trapped animal. "Easy now," he said, same tone he used with spooked horses. "Gonna cut you down." The rope parted under his blade. She collapsed forward, and he caught her weight against his chest. Light as a yearling, but solid, not some saloon dove or town lady. Her dress, though torn and dusty, showed good cloth and careful stitching. He eased her to the ground, propping her against the fence post. From his saddlebag, he fetched the tin canteen and a piece of cloth. The water came out warm from the morning sun, but she didn't seem to mind when he tilted it to her cracked lips. "Slow," he cautioned. "Too much too fast'll make you sick." She nodded, took small sips, while she drank. He wet the cloth and began cleaning the dust from her face. She sat still for it, those green eyes never leaving his face. "How long?" he asked. "Since dawn." Her voice came out rough as sandpaper. "Maybe before. Hard to tell." He moved to her wrists. The rope had left deep marks, the skin raw and weeping in places. She hissed when he touched them but didn't pull away. "Who did this?" She was quiet long enough he thought she might not answer. Then, "I'm Eliza Quinn, Mrs. Nathan Pike, if the paper means anything." A bitter laugh. "Though I reckon being a wife requires more than signatures." Rowan's hand stilled. Nathan Pike, the marshal over in Cedar Ridge. Man had a reputation for keeping strict order, collecting taxes prompt, and backing whoever paid best. Recent talk said he'd taken a wife, some girl from back east, or maybe one of those church schools. "You're the marshal's bride." "Bride." She tested the word like foreign food. "Wed 3 days back, legal and proper, with witnesses and all. But a wedding night?" She stopped, swallowed hard. "That requires willing participation from both parties." Rowan resumed cleaning the rope burns, keeping his touch light. Questions crowded his throat, but he'd learned long ago that silence often brought more truth than asking. "He locked the door," she continued, voice steady now. "Said I'd learn my place quick enough. When I wouldn't..." She gestured at the sign still hanging from her neck. "His deputies brought me here before sunup. Said the marshal wanted folks to know what happened to wives who forgot their duties." Rowan cut the twine holding the sign, tossed the board aside. Around her neck, he noticed a small silver locket on a thin chain. The delicate thing looked out of place against her sunburned skin. What caught his eye was the tiny keyhole in its center locked tight. "Can you ride?" "I can." He helped her stand, keeping a steadying hand at her elbow when she swayed. "My camp's not far. Got shelter and food. You can rest up. Figure your next move." "Why?" She studied him with those direct green eyes. "You don't know me. Could be the marshal's right about what I am." Rowan glanced at the discarded sign, then back to her. "Maybe, but I know what I seen. Woman tied like a livestock, left for the buzzards. Whatever you did or didn't do, that ain't justice." He whistled low, and the bay mare ambled over. Rowan mounted first, then reached down. Eliza looked at his extended hand for a long moment before accepting the help. She settled behind him, her hands light on his waist. "What's your name?" she asked as they started north. "Rowan Hale." "You're not from Cedar Ridge?" "No, ma'am. Just passing through. Got a line camp near Windmill Draw. Watching some horses for the Box T outfit." She fell quiet after that. Rowan felt the tension in her body, the way she held herself careful, trying not to lean against him despite her obvious exhaustion. The sun climbed higher, baking the moisture from the earth. In the distance, a red-tailed hawk circled on thermals. They'd gone maybe 2 miles when he felt her list sideways. He reached back, steadied her. "Almost there," he said. The line camp wasn't much a canvas lean-to stretched between posts, a stone fire ring, and a 3-sided shelter that served as stable. But the windmill still turned lazy in the breeze, pulling water into the wooden tank. The place had shade and safety, which was more than she'd had at that cattle pen. Rowan helped her down, noted how her legs trembled before she got them under control. He settled her in the shade of the lean-to while he tended the horse. When he returned with fresh water and some cold biscuits from breakfast, she'd pulled her knees to her chest, making herself small. "Thank you," she said, accepting the food. "No need for thanks." He crouched nearby, but not too close. "You got plans, somewhere to go?" "I thought—" She stopped, shook her head. "I thought I was starting a new life. The school said Marshal Pike was a respectable man needing a proper wife. Said he'd provide a good Christian home." "What school?" "St. Catherine's Home for Moral Instruction, in Kansas City." Her fingers found the locket at her throat. "They train girls to be suitable wives for Western men. Cooking, sewing, comportment, and other lessons. About duty, about submission." Rowan had heard of such places. Churches and do-gooders sending reformed women west to marry settlers. Some matches worked out, others. "The marriage is legal," she continued. "He made sure of that. Judge, witnesses, registry at the courthouse. But when he took me to his house, when he started—" She pressed her lips together. "I couldn't. I ran to the bedroom, barred the door. He sweet-talked first, then demanded, then threatened. Come morning, his deputies broke down the door." "And the sign?" "His idea of teaching the town a lesson. Show them what happens when someone defies the law." She met his eyes. "Even when the law wants what shouldn't be taken by force." Rowan stood, suddenly restless. He'd known men like Pike, men who wrapped their wants in respectability and righteousness, men who thought a piece of paper gave them rights to another person's body and soul. "You can stay here long as you need," he said. "I got supplies enough. When you're rested, we can figure out what comes next." "He'll come looking." "Likely so. You could get in trouble. Harboring a runaway wife, there's probably law against it." Rowan looked out across the grassland, then back to her. "Maybe, but I sleep out in the stable anyway. You'll have the lean-to. And Miss Quinn—" "Yes." "Far as I'm concerned, you're just a traveler I offered Christian shelter to. Nothing more." She studied him for a long moment. Then, for the first time, the corner of her mouth lifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. "Eliza," she said. "My friends back when I had them called me Liza." "All right then, Liza." He touched his hat brim. "I'll let you rest. There's a bucket and soap by the water tank if you want to wash up. I'll be with the horses if you need anything." He started to leave, then turned back. She'd already lain down on the bedroll, her eyes closed, in sleep. She looked younger. The harsh lines of fear and exhaustion softened. One hand still clutched that locked locket like an anchor. Rowan collected the wooden sign from where he'd dropped it by the fire ring. The carved words seemed to mock him. He thought about burning it right then, but something made him hesitate. Evidence, maybe, or reminder of what men did when they confused owning with loving. He stored it behind the saddles in the stable, then sat to mend a broken bridle, but his hands stayed idle while his mind worked over what he'd stumbled into. A marshal's wife, a woman who'd chosen defiance over submission, the kind of trouble that followed such choices. Through the stable opening, he could see her sleeping form in the lean-to. Whatever came next, she'd earned this rest, and when Nathan Pike came calling, which he surely would well, Rowan had faced down men with badges before. The windmill creaked its endless circle. A roadrunner darted through the brush, chasing lizards. The day stretched on, hot and still, while Liza Quinn slept and Rowan Hale kept watch, knowing peace never lasted long in this hard country. The windmill groaned its complaint against the evening breeze. Rowan checked the horses one more time before heading to the fire ring. Liza had slept through the afternoon heat, but now she sat on the lean-to's edge, watching the sun paint the mesas orange and red. "Hungry?" he asked. She nodded, then seemed to remember her manners. "Yes, thank you." He set about making supper beans that had soaked all day. Salt pork and cornbread cooked in the Dutch oven. Simple fare, but filling. She watched him work, her hands folded in her lap. The torn places in her dress had been pinned neat as possible. She'd washed her face and repinned her hair, though dust still clung to the dark strands. "I can help," she offered. "Rest is more important." She fell quiet again. Rowan noticed how she held herself spine straight despite exhaustion, chin level. The church school had taught deportment well, but underneath the proper posture, he sensed something else. A coiled spring, a door barred shut. When the food was ready, he filled 2 plates. She ate slowly, carefully, like someone who'd learned that meals could be taken away. The light faded from orange to purple. Night sounds started up crickets. A distant coyote, the horses shifting in their shelter. "I should tend those wrists," he said when she'd finished. She looked down at the raw marks as if seeing them for the first time. "They're not so bad." "Infection's bad out here. Best to keep wounds clean." He fetched his kit carbolic salve, clean bandages, a basin of water warmed by the dying fire. She extended her arms, palms up, in the firelight. The damage looked worse. Rope burns circled both wrists. Some places rubbed down to the meat. "This'll sting," he warned. "I've had worse." He doubted that was bravado. Careful as he could, he cleaned each wrist. She never flinched, though he saw her jaw tighten. The salve went on next, then clean strips of cotton wrapped firm but not tight. "There." He sat back on his heels. "Should heal clean if you keep them dry." She studied the white bandages. "You've done this before." "Ranch work brings all manner of hurts." "That's not what I meant." She met his eyes. "You're careful. Gentle, like you understand about not wanting to be touched." Rowan busied himself packing away the medical supplies. She saw too much, this quiet woman with her locked locket and barred doors. "I'll take the stable," he said. "You need anything in the night, just call out." Mr. Hale. Rowan. Rowan. She tested the name. "Why the stable? This is your camp." "You need the shelter more, and..." He paused, choosing words. "Figure you've had enough of men making assumptions about what they're owed. Separate quarters seems prudent." Something shifted in her face. Not quite surprise, but close. "Most men wouldn't think that way." "I'm not most men." He gathered his bedroll and started for the stable. Her voice stopped him. "There's coffee in the morning, real coffee. Strong enough to float a horseshoe." This time she did smile. Small and brief, but real. "Then I might survive another day." The stable was cooler than the open air, smelling of horse and hay and old leather. Rowan spread his bedroll in an empty stall where he could see the lean-to through the gap in the boards. Not watching her. Exactly, just keeping aware, the way a man did when something needed protecting. He'd barely settled when boot steps crunched on gravel, not trying for quiet. Rowan palmed his colt, eased to the stable entrance. A lone rider approached from the south, taking his time. The moon hadn't risen yet, but stars gave enough light to make out shapes. Big man on a bigger horse. Metal glinted at his chest badge or watch chain. "Hello, the camp," the rider called. Rowan stepped into view, gun hand empty but ready. "Evening." The man stopped just inside the firelight's reach. Deputy's badge. Sure enough, young fellow, trying to grow authority into his mustache. His eyes swept the camp, lingered on the lean-to. "Looking for someone," the deputy said. "Woman, might have passed this way." "Lots of folks pass through. This one's particular. Dark hair, green eyes, about yea high." He held a hand at shoulder height. "Wearing a blue dress, maybe torn some." Rowan kept his face plain. "What she wanted for, that ain't your concern." The deputy shifted in his saddle. "She's Marshal Pike's wife. Run off from her rightful home. He's offering $50 to whoever brings her back." $50? Rowan let out a low whistle. "Must want her back powerful bad." "Marshal's a man who keeps what's his." The deputy's eyes moved again to the lean-to. "Mind if I look around?" "Actually, I do." Rowan's voice stayed easy. "Man's camp is his castle, same as his home." The deputy's hand drifted toward his gun. "Could insist." "Could try." They watched each other across the dying fire. The deputy was younger, probably faster. But Rowan had years of reading men, knowing who'd pull and who'd posture. This one was still deciding. "Saw your horse tracks heading north from the old Garrett place," the deputy said finally. "Two riders. Looked like—" "I give lots of folks rides. Christian thing to do." "Where'd this particular folk end up?" Rowan shrugged. "Widow Sanchez has a boarding house in Las Cruces. Mentioned taking someone there this morning. Respectable place for a woman traveling alone." The deputy chewed on that. Las Cruces was 30 miles west. If he rode hard, he could check the story and be back by tomorrow night. Or he could push now, risk whatever waited in the dark stable. "Might be I'll check that boarding house," he said finally. "Might be I'll come back this way after." "Trail's free to all." The deputy wheeled his horse. At the camp's edge, he turned back. "Marshal Pike's not a forgetting kind of man. Neither am I." "I'll keep that in mind." Rowan waited until the hoofbeats faded before moving. He checked the horses, stirred the fire back to life, then sat where he could watch all approaches. The colt lay across his lap. He's gone. Liza stood at the lean-to's entrance, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "For now." She came closer, sat on a log across the fire from him. "I heard what you told him." "Might buy a day, maybe 2. "Then what?" "Then we figure something else." She pulled the blanket tighter. "You don't owe me anything." "Nobody owes anybody anything. Don't mean we can't choose to help." They sat quiet, watching the fire. Somewhere in the distance, that coyote called again. Its mate answered from another ridge. "There's something I should tell you," she said. "About the marriage. About why I couldn't—" "Don't need to tell me nothing. But if you're risking—" "Liza." He waited until she looked at him. "Whatever happened or didn't happen between you and Pike, that's your business. All I need to know is you're here now and you need help. Rest is just noise." She studied him across the flames. "You're a strange man. Rowan Hale." "Been told that before." "Good strange," she clarified. "The world could use more strange." The fire popped, sending sparks into the black sky. Rowan added another piece of wood. "That deputy will be back," she said. "Likely. With help." "Probably. You should just let them take me. Safer for you." Rowan considered that. The smart play was always to avoid trouble with the law. Keep your head down, mind your business, let the world sort its own problems. He'd lived that way for years. But then he thought about those rope burns, that wooden sign, the way she'd said, "I couldn't," with such quiet desperation. "Got a story," he said. "You want to hear it?" She nodded. "Few years back, I was working cattle down near the Pecos. Found a Mustang mare caught in a box canyon. Someone had run her in there, tried to break her hard. She was cut up bad from fighting the ropes, half-starved, mean as a rattlesnake." He poked at the fire, remembering. Smart thing would have been to leave her. Wild horse that torn up probably wouldn't never trust people again. But something about how she stood there, watching me with one good eye, couldn't ride on. What happened? Took 3 months, sitting quiet outside that canyon every day, leaving water, food, never pushing, never asking for more than she could give. One day she followed me out. Year later, she was the best cow horse I ever rode. Liza was quiet for a moment. "I'm not a horse." "No, but the principle's the same. Some things just need time and space to heal. Someone willing to wait without asking for nothing in return." She stood abruptly. "I should rest. Long day tomorrow. Whatever comes." "Liza." She paused. "That locket. You got the key." Her hand went to her throat. "No, it was my mother's. She died when I was 7. Father sent me to the church school after. The locket was locked when she gave it to me. Said I'd know when it was time to open it." "But no key." "No key." She managed a tired smile. "Story of my life. Mr. Hale, locked doors everywhere and no keys in sight." She disappeared into the lean-to. Rowan sat with the fire a while longer, thinking about locked things and patient waiting, about Mustang mares and frightened women, about the difference between breaking and gentling. When the moon finally rose, he made a last round of the camp. The horses dozed hip-shot in their shelter. The windmill turned lazy in the night breeze. From the lean-to came the soft, even breathing of exhausted sleep. He'd told the deputy true, a man's camp was his castle, and castles were made for defending. The night stretched long and quiet. Rowan kept watch, the colt near to hand, while somewhere in the dark, Liza Quinn slept behind her barred doors. And 50 miles away, a marshal planned to collect what he thought was his. Morning came with 2 riders on the southern horizon. Rowan spotted them while checking the water tank, dark shapes against the lightening sky. Moving steady but not hurried. He'd expected them sooner. "Company," he called toward the lean-to. Liza emerged, already dressed, hairpin neat. She'd been awake, waiting. Her eyes found the riders, and her shoulders drew up tight. "Stay inside," Rowan said. "Let me handle the talking. They're here for me. Maybe they're just passing through." She gave him a look that said she wasn't fool enough to believe that, but she stepped back into the lean-to's shadow. The riders came on slow, letting him get a good look. 2 deputies this time, both wearing their badges prominent. The one from last night, Harlan, Rowan remembered now, and an older fellow with gray in his beard and careful eyes. They stopped just outside comfortable talking distance. "Morning, Hale," Harlan called. "Deputy. This here's Deputy Colbert. We're looking for that woman I asked about." "Already told you. Took her to Las Cruces." Colbert spoke up, voice like gravel in a tin cup. "Funny thing, we sent a wire to Widow Sanchez. She ain't seen no woman matching the description." Rowan shrugged. "Must have changed her mind. Travelers do that." "Must have." Colbert swung down from his horse, moving like a man with aching joints. "Mind if we water our horses long ride from town? Tank's there for using." While Harlan led the horses over, Colbert wandered closer to the fire ring. Not threatening, just an old lawman taking in details. His eyes swept the camp 2 plates from last night, 2 cups by the coffee pot. "A nice setup here," Colbert said. "Box T treats their line riders well." "Can't complain." "How long you been working for them?" "Going on 2 months. And before that, here and there, wherever there's work." Colbert nodded, still taking that lazy inventory. His gaze stopped on something near the stable. Rowan followed his look-boot prints in the dust. Small boots. Woman's boots. "You know," Colbert said, conversational-like. "Marshal Pike's not what you'd call a warm man. But he's legal. Everything proper and by the book. Marriage certificate. Witnesses. Filed at the courthouse. Good for him. Makes her his wife legal. Makes helping her leave a crime. Interference with matrimonial rights. The law calls it." Rowan met the older deputy's eyes. "Interesting thing about law. Sometimes it protects folks. Sometimes it just gives bad men a way to justify badness. That's dangerous talk. Truth often is." Harlan came back from watering the horses. "We done talking, let's just search the place and be done." Colbert held up a hand. "Here's what I see. Hale, you got a woman here, those tracks say as much. Maybe she's Mrs. Pike, maybe not, but I got a job. And that job says bring her back if she's here. And if she don't want to go?" "Law says she goes anyway." Rowan felt his jaw tighten. "Even if going back means—" He stopped, started again. "You know what kind of man Pike is, what he does when doors are closed." Something flickered in Colbert's eyes. "I know he's the marshal. Know he keeps order in Cedar Ridge. Know the town council backs him because he keeps the taxes flowing and the riffraff moving on. That all you know?" Colbert was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried weight. "I know there's talk, always is about men in power. But talk ain't proof, and proof ain't my job. My job is the law." "Then we got a problem." "Seems so." They stood there in the morning light. 3 men measuring costs. The windmill creaked its circle. From inside the lean-to came the soft sound of movement, Liza trying to keep still and failing. Harlan's hand drifted to his gun. "We taking her or not?" "Hold on." Colbert pulled a folded paper from his vest. "Got something here might interest you. Hale." He unfolded it, slow. Held it so Rowan could read. A wanted notice. Printed neat, missing Mrs. Eliza Pike. Brown hair, green eyes, 5'4". Last seen wearing blue dress. Reward $50 for safe return to Marshal Nathan Pike, Cedar Ridge. $50. Colbert said, "Good money for a line rider. Already got a job. Job that pays maybe $30 a month. This is near 2 months' wages for a morning's work." Rowan read the paper again. Something about the wording nagged him. "Says missing, not runaway or wanted. Missing." So maybe she ain't running from nothing. Maybe she's just missing. And missing folks got a right to stay missing if they choose. Harlan spat tobacco juice. "You ain't that stupid, Hale." "Stupid enough, apparently." Colbert refolded the paper, tucked it away. "Here's another thing might interest you. Prescott clan's backing Pike for county judge come fall. They got interests in this. Mining interests. Railroad interests. The kind of interests that don't like being disappointed." Rowan knew the Prescott name. Owned half the territory, one way or another. The kind of men who bought lawmen like Pike, who carved up the land and sold it to Eastern money. "Prescott's interests ain't mine," he said. "Could be, though. Man who helps them tends to prosper. Man who doesn't." Colbert shrugged. "I'll take my chances." "You sure about that? Because once we leave here empty-handed, things change. Won't just be 2 deputies next time. And it won't be talking." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Rowan felt the weight of the Colt on his hip. Calculated odds. 2 against 1, both mounted. Him in the open. And even if he managed it, then what killing lawmen brought the whole territory down on you. "I need to check my horse," he said finally. "She threw a shoe yesterday. Give me a minute." Colbert studied him. 1 minute. Rowan walked to the stable, not hurrying. Inside, he found Liza pressed against the wall, listening. Her face had gone pale beneath the sunburn. "They know I'm here," she whispered. "Yeah, I should go with them. End this before—" "That what you want?" She closed her eyes. Want hasn't mattered much in my life. Matters now, right here, right now. What do you want? When she opened her eyes, they held something fierce. I want to never go back to that house, never feel his hands again, never hear him quote scripture while he... She stopped, breathing hard. But wanting won't stop them. Maybe not, but it's a start. He heard the deputies talking outside. Getting restless. Time running short. Listen, he said. There's another way. Not clean, not easy, but maybe better than fighting. What way? We give them something, not you, but something that makes them think twice. Buy time to figure better options. I don't understand. He moved to his saddlebags, pulled out a small leather pouch, $23 in gold coins, his savings from 2 months' work. Not much, but maybe enough. Wait here, he said. Outside, the deputies had dismounted. Hands rested on gun butts. The morning had turned tense as wire. Gentlemen, Rowan said, been thinking about your offer. Yeah, Harlan perked up. $50 is good money, but here's the thing I ain't seen misses. Pike, however. He hefted the pouch. Let them hear coins clink. I did help a woman traveling alone. Gave her supplies. Pointed her toward the stage road. She paid well for the assistance. Colbert's eyes narrowed. How well? $20 in gold. Said she was heading California way, had family there. And you just let her go? Wasn't my business to stop her. Free territory, last I checked. The deputies exchanged looks. $20 wasn't $50, but it was real money in hand versus maybe money later. This woman, Colbert said slowly. She say anything about why she was traveling? Said she was starting fresh. Something about a situation that didn't work out. When did she leave? Before dawn, probably halfway to the stage road by now. Colbert held out his hand. The money. Rowan tossed him the pouch. The deputy opened it. Counted $23. She was generous. Or you're lying. Harlan stepped forward. I say we search anyway. Go ahead. Rowan stepped aside. But you won't find nothing but an empty camp. Colbert held up a hand again. Here's what we're gonna do. We're taking this money as evidence. Proof of interaction with the missing woman. We're gonna report that she's headed west. Probably beyond territorial reach by now. And Marshal Pike can decide if he wants to pursue into California or cut his losses. Meanwhile, you keep your mouth shut about all this. Don't want to hear you've been talking in saloons about helping runaway wives. Wouldn't dream of it. Colbert pocketed the money. We'll be back this way, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, if we find out you lied. You won't. The older deputy studied him one more time. Something in his expression said he wasn't entirely buying the story, but $23 and avoided bloodshed made for acceptable arithmetic. Mount up, he told Harlan. The younger deputy protested. We ain't even looking. Nothing to see. Man says she went west. She went west. They swung into saddles. At the camp's edge, Colbert turned back. Free advice. Hale, whatever you got going here, end it quick. Pike's patience ain't infinite. And Prescott's is worse. Next visit won't be about talking. They rode off south toward Cedar Ridge. Rowan waited until the dust settled, then went back to the stable. Liza stood exactly where he'd left her. They're gone. For now. Your money. Just money. $23 isn't just money, not to a line rider. He shrugged. Rather be broke than compromised. She studied him with those direct green eyes. You keep surprising me. Rowan Hale. How's that? Most men got reasons for what they want. You just seem to want folks left alone to choose. Maybe that is my reason. She moved past him into the sunlight. At the lean-to, she turned back. They'll return, like he said. Probably. What then? Rowan looked at the horizon where the deputies had disappeared. Law on one side, Prescott money on the other. and them caught between like grass between stones. Then we'd better be somewhere else, he said. She nodded, understanding. The bought time was just that time. Not solution, not safety, just a few days to find better ground. I know some folks, she said quietly. In Las Cruces. From before. Maybe they'd help. Worth trying. It's asking a lot. You taking me there? Being seen with me? Been in worse trouble. Have you? He thought about other times. Other stands taken. Once or twice. She almost smiled. That Mustang mare, the one you gentled, what happened to her? Rode her 5 good years. Then one spring, found the gate open and her gone. Tracked her to a wild band up in the mountains. She looked at me. I looked at her, and I knew. Knew what? That I'd helped her heal enough to choose, and she chose free. Liza touched the locked locket at her throat. Must have hurt, losing her. Some, but hurt less than keeping her would have. They stood in the morning sun, 2 people measuring trust. Somewhere a meadowlark sang. The windmill turned its endless circles, and $23 in gold bought them time to find what came next. Evening brought a coolness that settled like dust on everything. Liza sat near the dying fire, using a stick to draw patterns in the dirt. Rowan watched from where he mended tack, noting how her designs took shape, squares, and lines that might have been windows and walls. What you drawing? He asked finally. She glanced up, then back to her dirt art. Nothing particular, but he could see it plain enough, a room with barred windows, a door with heavy boards across it, the kind of picture that came from memory, not imagination. We should talk about Las Cruces, he said. These friends of yours. Not friends, exactly. People from before. She kept drawing, adding what looked like a narrow slice of light between bars. The Riverside boarding house, Mrs. Chen runs it. She helped girls from the school sometimes. Helped how? Found work, real work, laundry, sewing, cooking for wages. The stick paused. Some girls couldn't take being wives. When they ran Mrs., Chen didn't ask questions. She's still there. Far as I know, haven't heard otherwise. Rowan set aside the bridle. It's 2 days' ride, maybe 3 if we're careful. You planning to walk? She abandoned her drawing, brushed dirt from her skirt. I meant what I said. You've done enough, more than enough. I can make my own way from here. With what horse, what supplies? I'll manage. Like you managed at that cattle pen. The words came sharper than intended. She flinched but didn't look away. That's not fair, she said quietly. No, it's not. He rubbed his face, feeling the day's grit. Sorry, that was uncalled for. But not untrue. She stood, moved to lean against the fence post. I was foolish. Thought marriage would be escape. Trading one cage for another. Turns out. How long were you at the school? 11 years. Since I was 7. Her fingers found the locket, turned it unconsciously. Father couldn't manage a motherless daughter. The sisters at St. Catherine's promised to make me suitable. Suitable for what? For whatever a man might require. Her voice carried no bitterness, just fact. Cooking, certainly, sewing, household management, but also comportment, submission, learning to be pleasant regardless of treatment. And if you weren't pleasant, she was quiet for a moment. There were corrections, nothing cruel, they'd say, just firm guidance, cold baths for willfulness, fasting for pride, extra prayers for impure thoughts. Rowan felt his jaw tighten. What kind of impure thoughts does a 7-year-old have? Wanting to run in the grass, laughing too loud, reading books not approved by the sisters. A slight smile touched her lips. I was quite the troublemaker, apparently. So they beat it out of you? No, never beatings. That would be uncivilized. She turned the locket again. They just wore it down. like water on stone, slow and patient until the sharp edges were gone. But not gone enough for Pike's liking. Her hand stilled. "No, not that." They stood in the gathering dark, night sounds starting up around them. Rowan tried to imagine 11 years in such a place. 11 years of being shaped and molded and corrected. No wonder she drew barred windows in the dirt. "There's something else," she said, "about why I couldn't with him. You don't owe me explanations. But you should know, if we're traveling together." She took a breath. "The sisters taught us about wifely duties, made it sound like sacrifice, noble suffering for the sake of family. But they never said it could be, wanted, that a woman might choose it gladly." Rowan kept quiet, sensing more coming. "When I was 16, there was a new teacher, Miss Morrison, young, maybe 25. She taught literature, made us read poetry the sisters wouldn't have approved." Liza's voice softened. "She was kind. The first person in years who asked what I thought, not what I'd been taught to think." "What happened?" "I felt things, confusing things. When she read aloud, I watched her mouth. When she passed my desk, I hoped she'd touch my shoulder." She laughed, short and bitter. "Impure thoughts indeed." "That's not impure, that's human." "The sisters didn't think so when they found my journal. Miss Morrison was dismissed. I spent 3 months in correction, extra prayers, extra fasting, extra reminders about the natural order and woman's place in it." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It taught me something important." She faced him fully. "It taught me desire could be mine. Not just something done to me, but something I might choose. And if I could feel that way about Miss Morrison, maybe someday." She trailed off, but he understood. Someday, with someone she chose, not a man with papers saying he owned her. "When Pike locked that door," she continued, "all I could think was not like this, not with fear, not with force. I'd rather die untouched than live with that memory." "So you barred your door?" "With everything I could find, dresser, trunk, even the washing stand." She managed a real smile. "He was quite furious by morning." "I imagine so. Called me unnatural, said a true woman would welcome her husband. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am unnatural." Rowan moved closer, careful not to crowd. "Nothing unnatural about wanting choice, about wanting kindness. That's the most natural thing there is." She studied him in the dying firelight. "You really believe that?" "I do. Even though the law says different, the church says different, the whole world says different. World's been wrong before." She turned back to her dirt drawing, scuffed it out with her boot. "I should rest. Long ride tomorrow." "Liza." She paused. "That teacher, Miss Morrison, you ever wonder what happened to her?" "Every day." She touched the locket again. "Sometimes I imagine she went somewhere nobody knew her, started fresh, maybe teaching children who are allowed to laugh loud and run in grass. Maybe she did. Maybe." She started toward the lean-to, then stopped. "Rowan, thank you for listening, for not judging." "Nothing to judge." She disappeared into the shelter. Rowan added wood to the fire, thinking about schools that taught girls to be property and men who locked doors to enforce ownership. About young women reading poetry and feeling things they weren't supposed to feel. He pulled out his knife and a piece of scrap iron from the toolbox. It was rough, not meant for fine work, but he'd shaped worse into something useful. By firelight, he began filing the metal, working it down to narrow dimensions. Not a real key, he couldn't pick locks, but maybe something that looked like possibility. The work took concentration. File and check, file and check. Making the teeth was guesswork, but the shape mattered more than function. Sometimes folks just needed to hold the idea of opening. Sometimes that was enough to start. The stars wheeled overhead while he worked. Coyotes called from distant ridges. The windmill creaked its lullaby. Normal sounds of a normal night. except for the woman sleeping in his lean-to and the trouble sleeping in Cedar Ridge. When the key blank was finished, he held it up to the firelight. Rough work, but recognizable. Tomorrow he'd smooth the edges, maybe add a hole for threading on a cord. Nothing that would open her mother's locket, but maybe something that would remind her that locked things didn't have to stay that way forever. He banked the fire and headed for the stable. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, 2 days of careful travel, watching for pursuit, finding safe places to rest. But tonight was quiet, and sometimes quiet was enough. From the lean-to came the soft sound of movement, Liza shifting in sleep, maybe dreaming of grass and laughter and choices freely made, or maybe just sleeping deep, the way people did when they finally felt safe. Rowan spread his bedroll in the straw, set the key blank careful on top of his saddlebags. In the morning, he'd give it to her. Not as answer or solution, just as reminder that some locks were meant to be opened, that some doors were meant to be chosen. The night stretched on, peaceful for now, and if peace was temporary, well, that made it worth guarding all the more. Dawn came gray and cool, mist hanging in the hollows like forgotten dreams. Rowan had the horses saddled before first light, moving quiet so as not to wake Liza. But she emerged from the lean-to already dressed, her few belongings wrapped in a piece of canvas he'd given her. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, then noticed the pack horse. "2 animals." "Borrowed from the box T-string. We'll move faster with you having your own mount." "Won't they mind?" "I'll square it when I get back." "If I get back," he didn't add. He helped her mount the gentle bay mare, adjusting the stirrups for her shorter legs. She sat the saddle well, back straight but not stiff. The church school must have included riding in their curriculum of proper womanhood. They headed west as the sun broke the horizon, painting the mesas blood and gold. Rowan kept them off the main trail, following deer paths and dry washes. Slower going, but less chance of meeting unwanted company. By mid-morning, they stopped to rest the horses near a seep spring. Liza knelt to refill the canteens while Rowan kept watch. The land stretched empty in all directions, but empty didn't mean unobserved. "Here," he said, pulling something from his pocket. "Made this last night." She took the piece of shaped metal, turned it in her fingers. "A key." "Of sorts. Won't open nothing real, but thought you might like having it, as a reminder." "Of what?" "That locks don't have to be permanent." She studied the crude key, then looked at him with those direct green eyes. "You made this for me?" "Wasn't nothing, just scrap iron and time." "It's not nothing." She pulled a length of rawhide from her pack, threaded it through the hole he'd filed. "May I?" He nodded. She hung the key around her neck, letting it rest beside the locked locket. 2 keys now, one that wouldn't open, one waiting for the right moment. "Thank you," she said simply. They rode on through the heat of the day. Liza proved tougher than she looked, never complaining about the pace or the dust. When they stopped to noon under a stand of cottonwoods, she tended her horse without being asked, checking hooves and adjusting the saddle. "You know horses," Rowan observed. "The school kept a small stable. I volunteered to help just to be outside." She smiled at the memory. "Sister Catherine said I smelled like horse. Meant it as criticism, but I took it as compliment." "Nothing wrong with honest horse smell." "That's what I thought. Beats lye soap and floor wax any day." They shared cold biscuits and jerky, washing it down with warm water. The cottonwoods threw dappled shade that moved with the breeze. Peaceful moment in a journey that might not stay that way. "Can I ask you something?" Liza said. "Ask." "Why are you helping me real reason, not just Christian charity?" Rowan considered how to answer. "You know what it's like, working cattle. Spending months with the same crew, moving from range to range. Tell me, you learn to read men, who'll stand when trouble comes, who'll run, who treats horses fair, who doesn't, little things that show big truths." He paused, choosing words. "Man I worked with once, Tom Brennan, good hand, funny stories, always first to help with chores. But I saw him kick a dog once when he thought nobody was looking, just because it was in his way. What did you do? Nothing then, but come spring roundup, when he got himself in a bad spot with an angry bull, found I was slow getting my rope. He get hurt. Nothing permanent, but he learned about consequences. Liza pulled her knees to her chest. And Pike? Never met him before this, but I know his type. Men who use law and God and proper society to justify taking what they want. Dress it up nice, but it's still just taking. So your evening scales? Maybe, or maybe I just can't abide locked doors and tied wrists. He stood, dusted off his pants. Either way, we should move. Want to make Hermosa Wells by dark. They mounted up and continued west. The land began to change. Bunch grass giving way to creosote and ocotillo. Rowan kept watching their back trail, but saw nothing except dust devils and the occasional antelope. Late afternoon brought them to a cluster of abandoned adobes around a failing well. Hermosa Wells had been a stage stop once, before the route changed. Now, only lizards and pack rats called it home. We'll rest here a few hours, Rowan said. Move on after moonrise. Not staying the night. Better to travel some in the dark, harder to track. They unsaddled in what had been the station's stable. Roof mostly gone, but the walls still stood. Rowan hauled up water for the horses while Liza explored the ruins. Someone carved names here, she called from the main building. Samuel and Maria, 1847. Wonder who they were. Travelers, probably like us. She traced the letters with one finger. Think they made it where they were going? Like to think so. I used to do that at school, carve my initials places. Little rebellions. She showed him her palm, a faint scar across the lifeline. Caught me once with a penknife. Sister Margaret was quite upset. What did you carve? E.Q. was here. Seemed important at the time. Proof I existed beyond their rules and corrections. Rowan pulled out his knife, offered it handle first. Well? She looked at him, surprised, then took the knife and found a clear spot on the adobe wall. Carved careful and deep. E.Q. chooses freedom, 1882. There, she said, handing back the knife. Let someone wonder about that in 40 years. They made a cold camp, not risking a fire. As twilight faded, Liza sat with her back against the wall, the makeshift key in her hand. I've been thinking about your Mustang story, she said. The mare you gentled then let go. What about it? Did you name her? Called her Bella, Spanish for beautiful. And when she left, did you look for her? Try to track her down? Rowan settled beside her, careful to leave space between. Thought about it, even saddled up once, made it halfway to the mountains, but then I asked myself why. Was it for her or for me? What did you decide? That if I really cared about her, I'd let her stay gone. My wanting her back didn't outweigh her choosing free. Liza turned the key over in her fingers. Pike will come after me. He's not the letting go type. No, he's not. What happens when he finds us? We'll handle it. That's not an answer. Rowan was quiet for a moment. There's different kinds of law. There's the law written in books. Says a wife belongs to her husband like a horse belongs to its owner. Then there's older law. Says a person belongs to themselves first and always. Which law do you follow? The one that lets folks breathe free. She leaned her head back against the adobe. I used to dream about this, being somewhere else, making my own choices. But I never imagined the in-between part, the running and hiding and not knowing. Most dreams skip the hard parts. Did you ever dream of something different than cow work and line camps? Once thought about having a place of my own. Few acres, good water, maybe run a small herd. He shrugged. But that takes money I don't have and probably never will. What happened to your family's place? Never had one. Father died when I was 10. Mother before I remember. Grew up working other people's land. I'm sorry. Don't be. Taught me to pack light and move easy. Useful skills. The moon rose, 3/4 full and bright. Time to move on. They saddled the horses in silver light, every sound seeming loud in the desert quiet. How much further to Las Cruces? Liza asked. Day and a half if we push, 2 if we're careful. Let's be careful. They led the horses out of the ruins, mounted up. Before they left, Liza looked back at the wall where she'd carved her declaration. Think anyone will read it? Someone will, and they'll know Eliza Quinn was here, making her own way. She smiled at that, the first full smile he'd seen from her. It changed her whole face, made her look younger and older at the same time. They rode out into the moon-washed desert, 2 small figures against the vastness. Behind them, the carved letters caught the light. Ahead, the trail wound through arroyos and over ridges toward Las Cruces and whatever waited there. The makeshift key bounced gently against the locked locket as they rode. Not an answer, not yet, but a promise that answers existed. Somewhere past the next ridge or the one after that. That locks could be opened when the time was right and the person was ready. For now, the riding was enough. The choosing was enough. The company of someone who understood that freedom was worth any price that was more than enough. The sound came with sunset horses moving fast from the east. Rowan heard them before the dust clouds showed. Maybe 6 or 7 riders pushing hard. He and Liza had made camp in a grove of mesquite trees near a dry wash, thinking they were far enough off the trail. Company, he said quietly. Liza looked up from tending her blistered feet. The hope in her eyes died quick when she saw his expression. How many? Too many. They could hear voices now, calling back and forth. Not trying for quiet. Men who expected to be obeyed. The wash. Rowan said, "Move!" They led the horses down into the sandy bottom, moving upstream toward where the banks rose higher. Behind them, the voices grew louder. Then one voice above the others, cold and controlled. Mr. Hale, I know you're close. Your tracks are fresh. Nathan Pike. Rowan had expected him eventually, but not this soon, not with this many men. Let's be civilized about this, Pike continued. His voice carried clear in the still air. I'm not an unreasonable man, just a husband seeking his wife. Liza's hand found Rowan's arm, gripped tight. He covered her hand with his. Brief pressure meant to reassure. They reached a bend where the wash deepened, banks 10 feet high and crumbling. Not ideal, but better than open ground. Rowan ground-tied the horses, pulled his rifle from the scabbard. Stay with the animals, he told Liza. If this goes bad, take the mare and ride. Don't look back. I won't leave you. Not asking you to leave, asking you to survive. He climbed the bank opposite from where Pike's voice had come. Belly crawled to where he could see through the mesquite. 7 riders sat their horses in a loose line. Pike in the center, wearing his badge like armor. 4 deputies, including Harlan and Colbert. 2 other men in good clothes, Prescott men by the look of them. There's no need for difficulty. Pike called out, I have legal papers. A valid marriage certificate. All I want is my wife returned. Rowan studied the positions, calculated angles. 7 men, spread wide. Even if he got lucky. Took down 2 or 3, the others would flank him, and Liza would still be trapped in the wash. I have a proposal. Pike continued. You there, Hale. I'm here. Good. Here's my offer. You bring out my wife. Ride away free. No charges for interference. No questions about that money you took from my deputies. Clean slate. And if I don't? Then things become unpleasant for both of you. Rowan glanced back at the wash. Liza had moved the horses further up, tucked them behind a jutting bank. Smart woman. She met his eyes across the distance, shook her head slowly. Don't trade me, the gesture said. Need a minute to think. Rowan called. 1 minute. He slid back down the bank. Liza waited at the bottom, chin up despite the fear in her eyes. He's right about the law, she said. The papers are legal. Legal don't make it right. But fighting won't change that. 7 against 1. About those odds. He checked his rifle. Counted cartridges. Not good, but I've seen worse. When? Rather not say. She studied him. You've killed before? Not a question. He nodded. For what? Survival, mostly. Once for principle. Which is this? Both. She touched the makeshift key at her throat. I won't go back. Rowan, I'll die first. Nobody's dying today. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise you won't go anywhere you don't choose. Time's up. Pike called. What's your decision? Rowan started back up the bank, then stopped, turned back to Liza. That locket, your mother's... Yes, she died natural. Liza's eyes widened at the question. Fever, when I was 7. Why? Just wondering. He climbed the bank again, showed himself partial behind a thick mesquite trunk. Marshal Pike, he called. Got a question for you. I'm done with questions. This one's important. You know anything about Liza's mother? How she died? Silence from the line of riders. Then Pike's voice. Harder now. What does that have to do with anything? Maybe nothing, maybe something. Woman dies of fever, leaves a locked locket to her daughter. Curious thing. You're stalling. Ask yourself why a dying woman would lock something meant for her daughter. Ask yourself what kind of secret needs that kind of keeping. He saw Pike shift in his saddle. The Prescott men exchanged glances. Here's what I think, Rowan continued. I think Liza's father knew something. Maybe about her mother, maybe about Liza herself. Something that made him need her gone but not dead. So he sends her to that school. Lets them try to pray and starve it out of her. You're talking nonsense. Am I? Then why'd you pick her, marshal of all the girls that school could send? Why her unless someone told you she was special, different, the kind of woman who might lock her own doors? Liza had climbed halfway up the bank, listening. Her face had gone pale. Enough talk, Pike said. Bring her out or we're coming in. One more thing, Rowan called. You ever meet Liza's mother, ever do business with her father? Pike's silence stretched too long. When he spoke again, his voice carried threat. Last chance, hail. That's what I thought. Rowan slid back down. He knows something. About your family. That's why he wanted you specifically. That's impossible. My father never said... What did your father say about your mother? Just that she died. Fever. He couldn't manage alone, so... She touched the locket. You think there's more? I think locked things usually have reasons. Hoofbeats above. The riders were moving, spreading out to surround the wash. Time for talk was done. Mount up, Rowan said. We run upstream, fast as we can. There's a box canyon about a mile up, narrow entrance, good cover. That's a trap. Or a fortress. Depends on how you use it. They swung into saddles just as the first rider appeared on the bank above. Harlan, eager as always. His shot kicked sand near Liza's horse. Go! Rowan shouted. They spurred upstream, sand flying. More shots cracked behind them, but hitting moving targets from horseback was harder than most men figured. The wash twisted and turned, banks rising higher as they rode. A rider crashed down the bank ahead, trying to cut them off. One of the Prescott men, fancy clothes not suited for rough work. Rowan's horse shouldered into his, sent both animals stumbling. The man went down hard, rolled clear cursing. More riders above now, pacing them. Pike's voice rose over the hoofbeats, shouting orders. The wash began to narrow, walls steepening, almost there. The box canyon opened to their left, barely wide enough for 2 horses abreast. They plunged through, hooves echoing off stone walls. 100 yards in, the canyon widened into a circular space maybe 30 feet across, sheer walls all around except for the entrance. "Here," Rowan said, dismounting quick. He grabbed his rifle. Liza did the same. She'd found a Winchester in her saddle scabbard, handled it like she knew which end was which. "You shoot." The school had a rifle club. Very ladylike. They said, taught discipline and steadiness. "Good. Find cover. Watch that entrance. Anyone comes through shooting, you shoot back." "What about you?" "Going to try talking one more time." He moved to the canyon mouth, found a protected spot behind fallen rocks. The pursuers had pulled up outside, visible as shadows in the dying light. "Marshal," he called. "We're bottled up good. You can starve us out eventual, but rushing us means men die. Your men, that what you want. What I want is my wife. Send her out. This ends." "Can't do that." "Then you've chosen your fate." Movement in the shadows. They were dismounting, preparing. In minutes, maybe less, they'd try the entrance. In the narrow space, the first men through would die certain, but eventually, numbers would tell. Rowan glanced back. Liza knelt behind a boulder, rifle steady. The last sunlight caught the keys at her throat, one locked, one waiting. "Marshal," he called again. "Let me ask you something. Your wife, she fight you when you tried to claim your rights." "That's between man and wife." "Did she say no clear and plain?" "She was hysterical, confused. Women get that way." Or maybe she was clear-minded. Maybe she knew exactly what she didn't want. "The law says..." "I know what the law says. But there's older law. Says a person owns their own body. Says no means no, whether it's stranger or husband saying different." "You talk like a radical, like one of those suffrage agitators." "I talk like a man who's seen too many locked doors and tied wrists. Too many people treated like property." "She is property, legal and binding." "Then why'd she run? Why'd she bar her door? Why'd she choose possible death over your bed?" Silence from outside, then footsteps, slow and deliberate. Pike appeared in the entrance, hands empty, but deputies flanking him with drawn guns. "Because she's unnatural," Pike said, "corrupted, needs firm guidance to find her proper path. Or maybe she's the most natural thing there is, a person claiming their right to choose." Pike's face showed clear now in the last light, handsome in a cold way, like carved stone, the kind of face that expected obedience and got it. "Enough philosophy," he said. "Here's reality. In 10 seconds, my men come through shooting. Some will die. Yes, but you'll die certain, and she'll still be my wife. Your widow, more like..." Something flickered in Pike's eyes. Not quite uncertainty, but close. "You'd kill her rather than see her returned." "I'd defend her right to choose, whatever that takes." They stared at each other across 20 feet of sand and stone, law on one side, something older on the other. In the canyon behind, Liza stood slowly, moved to where Pike could see her. "Nathan," she said, her voice carried strong despite everything. "I'll make you a bargain." "You have nothing to bargain with." "Don't I?" She pulled the marriage certificate from her dress, the copy Pike had given her, now crumpled and travel-stained. "This paper makes me your wife, but wife means partnership, means 2 people choosing each other daily. Pretty words don't change law." "No, but truth might..." She held the paper high. "Here's my bargain. You tear this up, let us ride away, and I keep your secret, the one about my mother, about why you really wanted me." Pike went very still, behind him. The Prescott men shifted uneasily. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Then call it rush us, take me back, and wonder always when I'll remember what my mother knew, when I'll unlock what she kept hidden." She touched the locket. "When I'll tell others what kind of man you really are." The moment stretched taut as wire. 7 men with guns against 2 in a stone trap. But something had shifted. The Prescott men were looking at Pike different now. Calculating. Pike took a step back from the canyon entrance, his jaw working like he was chewing bitter root. The Prescott men had pulled their horses aside, no longer flanking him with the same certainty. Even the deputies seemed uneasy, looking between their marshal and the armed couple in the rocks. "You're lying," Pike said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then call it," Liza repeated. "Take your chances." The certificate fluttered in her hand like a trapped bird. Rowan kept his rifle steady, watching the deputy's hands. Colbert, the older one, had eased his gun back into leather. Small sign, but maybe significant. "Mr. Pike." One of the Prescott men spoke up, thin fellow with banker's hands. "Perhaps we should discuss this situation privately." "There's nothing to discuss. She's my legal wife." "Legal matters can be reconsidered if circumstances warrant." The banker's eyes flicked to Liza, calculating. "The Prescott family has no interest in scandals, past or present." Pike turned on him. "You backing out, Hutchins?" "I'm suggesting prudence. A man seeking judicial appointment needs spotless reputation. If there are complications, better to know now." "There are no complications." But sweat beaded Pike's forehead despite the cooling air. Whatever secret Liza had stumbled onto, it had weight, maybe enough weight to tip scales. "Marshal," Colbert spoke quiet. "Been thinking on what Mr. Hale said about choosing, about older law." "You too, Colbert." "Just thinking is all. My Sarah. She chose me free and clear. Can't imagine it working any other way." He shifted his weight, hand moving away from his gun. "Maybe some things shouldn't be forced." "You work for me." Pike's voice went sharp. "You swore an oath." "To uphold law and keep peace. Question is, which law and whose peace?" The moment balanced on a knife's edge. 7 men with shifting loyalties, 2 defenders with limited ammunition, and secrets hanging in the air like smoke. Then hoofbeats from the east, everyone tensed, weapons rising. A lone rider appeared against the darkening sky, moving fast. He pulled up hard at the edge of the group, horse lathered and blowing. Marshal Pike. The rider was young, barely whiskered. "Telegram from Cedar Ridge. Urgent." Pike snatched the paper, read by matchlight. His face went from flushed to pale in the space of seconds. He read it again, then crumpled it slow. "What is it?" Hutchins demanded. "Judge Morrison, from the Territorial Court." Pike's voice came hollow. "He's ordered a review of all recent marriages performed in Cedar Ridge. Says there have been irregularities reported." Rowan felt Liza start beside him. Morrison. Like the teacher from her school. "What kind of irregularities?" Hutchins pressed. "Doesn't say, but he's arriving tomorrow. Wants all documentation ready." The Prescott men exchanged looks that said everything. A territorial judge sniffing around meant trouble they didn't need. Their support, already wavering, evaporated like morning dew. "Well then," Hutchins said, adjusting his coat. "Seems the matter resolves itself. If the marriage is under review, taking Miss Quinn by force would be premature, possibly illegal. The certificate is valid. Perhaps, perhaps not. That's for Judge Morrison to determine." Hutchins turned his horse. "The Prescott family wishes you luck with your review, Marshal, but we'll be withdrawing our support for your judicial appointment. Can't be too careful in these delicate times." The other Prescott men followed without a word. Their departure left a hole in Pike's authority big as a barn door. "Deputies," Pike barked. "We still have a job." "Do we, though?" Harlan interrupted. Young and eager, but not stupid. "If the judge is reviewing things, maybe we should wait. See how it plays out legal-like." "I'm giving you an order." And I'm thinking about my pension, Colbert said, mild. Got 2 years till retirement. Rather not spend them explaining to Judge Morrison why I enforced a marriage he might declare invalid. One by one, the deputies holstered their weapons. Not quite mutiny, but close. Pike stood alone at the canyon mouth, rage and something else, maybe fear, warring on his face. This isn't over, he said to Liza. Whatever you think you know. I know enough. She still held the certificate high. I know my mother came from somewhere else before she married. I know she kept secrets. And I know you were very particular about wanting me specifically. Coincidence. Maybe. Or maybe someone told you something about her bloodline. Something that made you think I'd be manageable, docile, easy to control. Pike's hand moved toward his gun. Rowan's rifle swung to cover him. Try it, Rowan said quiet. Your men won't back you now. For a moment, Pike looked ready to draw anyway. Then his shoulders sagged. The badge on his chest caught the last light as he turned. Mount up, he told his deputies. We're leaving. What about, Harlan started. We're leaving. They mounted slow, reluctant. As they prepared to ride out, Colbert guided his horse close to the canyon entrance. Miss Quinn, he said, touching his hat. My apologies for all this. Should have listened to my gut sooner. Thank you, Deputy. He nodded to Rowan. You take care, both of you. Might want to avoid Cedar Ridge for a time. Planned on it. The posse rode east, Pike rigid in his saddle. They watched until the hoofbeats faded, then longer, making sure it wasn't a trick. Finally, Rowan lowered his rifle. It's done, he said. Liza sank to her knees in the sand, certificate crumpling in her hands. Not crying, just breathing deep like she'd been underwater too long. Morrison, she whispered. Could it be? Same names, not uncommon. But the timing, the review. She looked up at him. What if she knew, what if Miss Morrison knew about my mother? About whatever Pike wanted? Questions for another day. Right now, we need distance. He helped her stand, steadied her when she swayed. The keys at her throat caught moonlight, one locked, one free. They led the horses from the canyon careful, checking for ambush. But the night was empty except for owl calls and wind through sage. At the wash, they mounted up. Still want Las Cruces? Rowan asked. I don't know. Everything's different now. Is it you're still free? Still choosing your path? Just got more information is all. She considered that. The judge, should I try to see him? Find out what he knows? Your choice. But maybe let him finish with Pike first. Man's got enough troubles coming without adding yours. They rode south through darkness, following stars and instinct. Miles passed quiet, both lost in thought. When they finally stopped to rest the horses, Liza pulled out the marriage certificate. Should I keep it evidence? Maybe. Up to you. She studied the paper by moonlight official seals, proper signatures, all the weight of law reduced to ink and promises. Then she tore it careful. Once, twice, 3 times. Let the pieces scatter on the wind. No more locked doors, she said. They rode on toward Las Cruces, toward Mrs. Chen's boarding house and whatever came next. Behind them, scraps of paper tumbled through sage like snow. Ahead, the trail stretched into possibility. The makeshift key bounced against the locked locket with each step. Questions remained about mothers and secrets, about judges named Morrison and why a marshal would want a specific bride. But questions could wait. For now, freedom was enough. Choice was enough. And if the past came calling again, well, they'd proven that even 7 against 2 weren't insurmountable odds. Not when the two were fighting for something worth more than law or paper or the weight of other people's expectations. The night wind carried sage and distance. Somewhere, a marshal faced a judge's questions. Somewhere, deputies reconsidered their loyalties. But here, now, 2 people rode toward dawn, unencumbered by anything except their own decisions. Liza began to hum quiet, almost unconscious, a melody Rowan didn't recognize. Maybe something from before the school and its corrections. The sound was sweet in the darkness, speaking of unlocked possibilities and doors that opened from the inside. They rode on, and the night welcomed them like a blessing. They sheltered in a narrow arroyo as dawn approached, both exhausted from the night's hard riding. The horses stood hip-shot, heads low, grateful for rest. Rowan had found a seep spring tucked against the rock wall. Barely enough water to fill the canteens, but sweet and clear. Liza sat with her back against a boulder, the locked locket in her palm. She'd been quiet for miles, lost in thought. Now she looked at him with those direct green eyes. "My full name," she said, "is Eliora Quinn. Eliora means God is my light in Hebrew." Pretty name. The sisters at school wouldn't use it. Too foreign. They called me Eliza instead. Proper English name for a proper English girl. She turned the locket, watching it catch the early light. But was I not fully English? That's what Pike knew. Rowan settled across from her, giving space but staying close. "What do you remember about your mother?" "Fragments. Dark hair like mine, but curlier. She sang while she cooked songs I didn't understand. Father would tell her to stop, said it wasn't fitting." Liza's fingers traced the locket's edge. "She smelled like cinnamon and something else. Cardamom, maybe. Sounds like she came from far away. Father met her in New Orleans. That's all he'd say. But New Orleans is full of people from everywhere." She looked up. What if she was Jewish or Creole or something else Pike thought he could use? Use how? "I don't know. But he was so specific about wanting me. The school had other girls available. Some prettier, some more compliant. But he chose me." Rowan thought about Pike's reaction to her threats, the way his certainty had crumbled. Maybe he thought different blood meant different temperament, easier to control. Or harder to protect. If I wasn't fully white in his eyes, maybe he thought... She stopped, jaw tightening. Maybe he thought no one would care what he did to me. The words hung between them. Ugly truth about ugly intentions. Rowan felt anger rise, pushed it down. Pike was dealt with for now. What mattered was the woman in front of him, working through realizations that changed everything and nothing. "Can I tell you something?" Liza asked. "About that night. The wedding night." "Only if you want to." She set the locket aside, pulled her knees up. He was almost gentle at first, polite, like he was following a script about how wedding nights should go. But when I said I wasn't ready, needed time, her voice steadied. He said I didn't understand my place, that wives don't say no, that my kind especially needed firm guidance. Your kind. That's what made me run to the bedroom, not just fear of the act itself, but the way he said your kind, like I was livestock with bad bloodlines needing correction. A roadrunner darted across the arroyo, chasing some small prey, the normal world continuing while they sat with revelations. "I should be angry at my father," Liza continued, "for hiding the truth, for sending me away. But mostly I'm sad. He let fear of difference steal my mother's memory from me. Maybe the locket holds some of that memory." She picked it up again. "I've tried everything, hairpins, knife points, even a blacksmith's tools once. It won't open." "May I see?" She hesitated, then handed it over. The locket was heavier than it looked. Silver gone dark with age. The keyhole was tiny, delicate, not meant for any ordinary key. "Lock this small, this precise," Rowan said, examining it. "That's skilled work. Expensive. Your mother must have valued what's inside." "Or feared it being found." He handed it back. "When you're ready, we'll find a proper locksmith, someone who can open it without damage. In Las Cruces, maybe, or somewhere else, if that's what you choose." She tucked the locket away, then surprised him by laughing short but genuine. You know what's strange? I feel more myself now than ever. Like learning I might be different from what they said makes me more real, not less. You were always real. Just took a while to see it clear. She studied him. You don't care, do you, about bloodlines or proper ancestry or any of that? I care about actions, about choices. Rest is just noise people make to feel important. Not everyone thinks that way. Their loss. She stood, stretched muscles stiff from riding. We should move. Find better shelter before the heat comes. Liza. He waited until she looked at him. That name, Eliora. You want me to use it? She considered. Not yet. Maybe someday. When I've earned it back from all those years of being someone else's idea of proper. They saddled the tired horses, prepared to push on toward Las Cruces. As Liza adjusted her stirrups, she spoke again. That teacher, Miss Morrison, I think I loved her. Not the way they said was wrong, but purely the way you love someone who shows you possibility. She swung into the saddle. If Judge Morrison is related, if he knew her, maybe that's why he's reviewing Pike's marriages. Maybe she told him about girls like me at the school. Maybe so. Would it be wrong to hope that someone remembered me enough to act? Nothing wrong with hope. They rode out of the arroyo as the sun climbed higher. The trail ahead showed clear, no dust clouds, no riders, just empty country waiting to be crossed. I want to tell you something, Rowan said after a while, about being careful with touch, about understanding boundaries. She glanced at him, waiting. Had a sister once, Sarah, 3 years older than me. He kept his eyes on the horizon. When I was 8 and she was 11, man came to work our farm. Friendly fellow, good with horses. My folks trusted him. What happened? He was patient, spent months being helpful, being kind. Then one day I found Sarah crying in the barn. Wouldn't say why, but I saw the fear. His hands tightened on the reins. She made me promise not to tell. Said it would break up our family. Said it was her fault for being too friendly. Oh, Rowan. I kept that promise for 2 days. Then I told. Parents didn't believe me at first he was such a nice man. After all. But I wouldn't let it go. He paused. They sent him away eventually. But Sarah was never the same. Married young to the first man who'd have her. Moved far away. Like she was running from the memory. Is that why you helped me, because of Sarah? Partly, but also because it's right. Because everyone deserves to choose who touches them and when and how. He looked at her then. Because no should mean no, whether it's a stranger or a husband or anyone else. They rode in silence for a time, the weight of shared truth settling between them. The sun climbed higher, painting the desert in shades of gold and brown. I need to say something, Liza said eventually, about gratitude and what I don't owe you. You don't owe me anything. I know. That's what I need to say. Thank you for knowing that. For never once making me feel like your help came with expectations. Help with strings isn't help. It's just another kind of trap. She smiled then, soft but real. You're an unusual man, Rowan Hale. Been told that before. Good unusual, the kind the world needs more of. Ahead, a dust devil danced across the trail, spinning sand and memory into the sky. They guided the horses around it, continuing toward Las Cruces and whatever waited there. Can I ask you something? Liza said. When this is over, when I'm settled somewhere safe, what will you do? Go back to work, I suppose, if the box T will still have me after borrowing their horses. Is that what you want? He considered. Want hasn't mattered much in my life either. Maybe it should. Maybe we both need to practice wanting things. What do you want besides freedom? She was quiet for a long moment. I want to learn who my mother really was. I want to open this locket. I want to find work that matters, that helps other women in bad situations. She paused. And I want to stop being afraid of my own desires. Want to believe that wanting closeness doesn't mean accepting ownership. Those are good wants. What about you? What do you want? The question sat heavy. He'd spent so many years just surviving, moving from job to job, keeping connections light. But riding with her these past days, something had shifted. I want to see you safe, he said finally. Want to know you're somewhere choosing your own path. Maybe want to check in sometimes. Make sure that path is treating you kind. Just check in. He looked at her, saw something in her eyes that made his chest tight. That depends. On what? On what you want, when you're ready to want it. She reached across the space between horses, touched his hand brief on the saddle horn. I'm learning. About wanting, about choosing, about the difference between walls that protect and walls that imprison. No rush. Got all the time in the world. Do we? He thought about Pike, about Prescott interests, about all the forces that didn't like people choosing free. We've got today. Tomorrow, too. Probably. Past that. We'll see. She nodded, understanding. They rode on through the warming morning, two people practicing hope in a hard country. The locked locket and makeshift key clinked gentle with each step, marking time and possibility in equal measure. Behind them, their tracks filled slowly with blown sand. Ahead, Las Cruces waited with its boarding houses and new chances, and somewhere between past and future, in this moment of choosing. Eleora Quinn began to become herself again, one free breath at a time. They reached the outskirts of Las Cruces as afternoon shadows grew long. The town sprawled along the Rio Grande Valley, adobe buildings catching the slanted light like honey on stone. Smoke from cooking fires mixed with the smell of river water and cultivated fields. The boarding house is on Mesilla Street, Liza said, near the old plaza. They kept to side streets, avoiding the main thoroughfare where questions might arise about a dusty cowboy and a woman in a torn dress. The horses picked their way over cobblestones, hooves echoing between narrow walls. Mrs. Chen's riverside boarding house sat behind a wooden gate painted the color of sage. The courtyard beyond showed careful tending pepper plants in clay pots, a small fountain trickling clear water, shade from an ancient cottonwood. Wait here, Liza said, dismounting. Let me speak with her first. Rowan held the horses while she approached the door. It opened before she could knock. A small woman emerged, gray streaking her black hair. Face lined but sharp. She took one look at Liza and pulled her into a fierce embrace. Foolish girl. Mrs., Chen said, loud enough for Rowan to hear. I told you not to trust their matches. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't mend what's broken. Mrs. Chen held her at arm's length, examining. But you're here now. That's what matters. Her eyes found Rowan, measured him like a merchant weighing gold. You brought her. She brought herself. I just rode along. Mrs. Chen's expression gave nothing away. Bring the horses around back. We'll talk inside. The back courtyard held a small stable, water trough, and what might have been a garden before the summer heat. Rowan tended the horses while women's voices drifted from the house, Liza explaining. Mrs. Chen asking sharp questions. When he finally entered through the back door, he found them in a kitchen that smelled of ginger and chilies. Liza had washed her face, pinned her hair proper. She looked younger, closer to the girl she might have been without the school and its corrections. Sit, Mrs. Chen commanded, pointing at a sturdy table. You look half-starved, both of you. She set out food without waiting for response. Rice, beans, some kind of meat in dark sauce, flatbread still warm. Rowan hadn't realized his hunger until the smells hit. They ate while Mrs. Chen watched, her expression cycling through concern, anger, and something that might have been planning. Marshal Pike, she said when they'd slowed. I know of him. He tried to close my establishment once, said I was harboring loose women. What happened? Liza asked. I reminded him that my boarders pay taxes, that the mayor's mother takes tea here Sundays, that I know which saloon he visits when his righteousness needs loosening. She smiled, sharp as glass. He hasn't bothered me since. He might now, if he connects me to you. Let him try. I've weathered worse storms than Nathan Pike. A knock at the front door made them all tense. Mrs. Chen rose smooth. No hurry. Finish eating. I'll see who calls. She disappeared into the front of the house. Rowan's hand found his gun, but Liza shook her head. She knows everyone. If it was trouble, she'd signal. Still, he listened close to the voices, Mrs. Chen's calm tones, and another woman, younger, speaking rapid Spanish. When Mrs. Chen returned, she wasn't alone. The young woman looked maybe 20, with bright black eyes and ink-stained fingers. She wore a divided skirt suitable for riding and carried herself with purpose. This is Teresa Morales. Mrs. Chen said, she writes for the newspaper, the Spanish one that actually prints truth. Teresa's eyes widened when she saw Liza. You're the marshal's bride who disappeared. Liza tensed. How do you... Pike sent notices to all the papers. Wanted them to print alerts about his missing wife. Very concerned about her safety, he claimed. Teresa pulled a folded paper from her pocket. But then today, something interesting. A telegram from Judge Morrison canceling those notices, saying the matter was under legal review. She spread the paper on the table. Sure enough, a tersely worded message directed all publications to cease printing information about Mrs. Nathan Pike until further notice. There's more, Teresa continued. Judge Morrison has called for testimonies. Any woman married in Cedar Ridge the past 2 years who has complaints about their treatment, confidential hearings, he promises, protected witnesses. Protected how? Rowan asked. Federal marshals from Santa Fe, not local law. Teresa's smile held satisfaction. Seems the judge doesn't trust Cedar Ridge's finest to guard witnesses against their own marshal. Liza touched the telegram like it might disappear. Could I testify? If you're willing. Others have already come forward. 3 so far. More expected. Teresa leaned forward. There are whispers about why Pike chose certain women. About promises made to husbands regarding their wives' compliance. About threats when that compliance wasn't forthcoming. You mean he's done this before? It appears so. Always women without strong family connections. Often from institutions or distant places. Women who could disappear without much fuss. Mrs. Chen set tea on the table, her movements sharp with anger. I've seen the pattern. Girls from the reformatory. Orphans aging out of the children's home. Foreign women with uncertain status. He preys on the vulnerable. But why? Liza asked. Why go through legal marriage if he just wanted power? Mrs. Chen said flat. Legal power. A wife can't testify against her husband in most courts. Can't own property without his consent. Can't leave without becoming a criminal. She looked at Rowan. You helped a fugitive. Technically, could be arrested for it. I'll take my chances. Brave words. But Pike has friends. The Prescott family might have withdrawn public support, but they still have interests. Still have men who do violence for pay. As if summoned by her words. Bootsteps sounded on the front porch, multiple sets, moving with purpose. Teresa went pale. Back door, Mrs. Chen said quick. Both of you. But Rowan was already moving to the window. 4 men outside, watching the exits. Not law, no badges showing. Hired guns by their look. Trail dust still on their coats. Too late, he said. The front door opened without a knock. 2 men entered, hands resting on gun butts. One Rowan recognized Hutchins, the Prescott man from the canyon. But his banker's clothes were gone, replaced by trail wear. His companion was younger, harder, with scars that spoke of violence enjoyed. Mrs. Chen, Hutchins said pleasant enough. Sorry to intrude. We're looking for someone. Many people look for many things. I run a boarding house, not a finding service. Clever. His eyes found Liza. Mrs. Pike, your husband worries. Former husband, Liza said steady. The marriage is under review. Legal technicalities, but private contracts remain. Hutchins pulled a paper from his vest. Mr. Prescott bought your husband's interest. Debt transfer. All proper and signed. Makes you a Prescott asset now. People aren't assets, Rowan said. Aren't they? The scarred man spoke for the first time. Depends on the contract. This one says the marshal borrowed significant funds for his campaign. Used his wife as collateral. Now the debt's called in. That's not legal, Teresa protested. You can't use people as collateral. Can't you happens all the time. Indentures, apprenticeships, marriage contracts with financial terms. Hutchins smiled cold. The law has many interpretations. Show me this contract. Mrs. Chen demanded. Hutchins handed it over. She read quick, her face darkening. This is dated 3 days ago, after Mrs. Pike left. Details, the debt existed before. This just formalizes the transfer. Liza stood slowly. What does Prescott want? Smart question. Hutchins tucked the paper away. Mr. Prescott invests in many things, including certain houses that cater to particular tastes. Foreign women are especially popular. Exotic, they call it. The words hung in the air like poison. Rowan's hand found his gun, but the scarred man was already moving. Fast, practiced. The table flipped, sending dishes crashing. Women screamed. Rowan cleared leather, but the scarred man was on him, knife appearing from nowhere. They crashed into the wall, struggling for control. The blade caught light, seeking flesh. More men poured in from the back, misses. Chen swung an iron pot, catching one across the temple. He dropped hard. Teresa threw hot tea in another's face, his curses filling the air. Liza grabbed for the dropped gun, but Hutchins kicked it away. None of that, Mrs. Pike, you're valuable property. Can't have you damaged. I'm not property. Contract says different. The knife pressed closer to Rowan's throat. The scarred man knew his business, had leverage and position. In seconds, it would be over. Then thunder shook the room. The scarred man jerked, red spreading across his shirt. He looked surprised as he fell. In the doorway stood Judge Morrison, tall, gray-bearded, holding a smoking army Colt. Behind him, 2 federal marshals with rifles, badges gleaming. Gentlemen, the judge said calm as Sunday dinner. I believe you're trespassing. Hutchins raised empty hands. Judge, we're conducting legal business. Are you now? Morrison stepped over the scarred man's body. Because I see assault, attempted kidnapping, and this. He picked up the contract from where it had fallen, read it with disgust. Fraud, most likely, certainly invalid. As Mr. Pike had no authority to pledge what he didn't own. The marriage is void. I signed the order an hour ago. Seems Mr. Pike forgot to mention he had a living wife in Missouri. Makes all his Cedar Ridge marriages invalid. Liza sank into a chair. He was already married. For 12 years. Poor woman thought he died in a mine accident. Imagine her surprise when my investigators found her. Hutchins backed toward the door. Mr. Prescott won't appreciate interference. And Mr. Prescott is welcome to take it up with federal court after he explains these contracts and certain other activities my office is investigating. Morrison smiled cold as winter. Run along now. Tell Prescott his business in Cedar Ridge is finished. Him and Pike both. The hired guns filed out, carrying their dead companion. Hutchins went last, fury barely contained. When they were gone, Morrison holstered his weapon. Mrs. Chen, my apologies for the disturbance. You have interesting timing. Judge. Miss Morales sent word you might have visitors. He looked at Teresa with approval. Fine instincts. Young woman. Consider that federal witness position we discussed. I will. Morrison turned to Liza. Miss Quinn, I understand you've had a difficult time. You could say that. I knew an Eleora once. Taught at a school in Kansas. Brilliant woman. Wrote often about students who deserved better than they got. His eyes were kind. She mentioned one girl in particular, brave child who carved her initials everywhere, trying to prove she existed. Liza's breath caught. Miss Morrison was your sister. She passed 2 years ago. Tuberculosis, he sighed. But she left letters, names, stories. When Nathan Pike's name appeared, I remembered, decided perhaps it was time someone looked closer at his activities. She remembered me. Quite fondly. Said you had a questioning mind that no amount of correction could kill. He pulled something from his pocket. She left this, asked me to give it to Eleora Quinn if I ever found her. It was a small brass key on a ribbon. Delicate, exact. Liza took it with shaking hands. How did she... Your mother gave it to the school when she enrolled you. For safekeeping, she said. The sisters were supposed to return it when you married. Morrison's expression went dark. Apparently, they decided you didn't need family secrets. Gave it to Eleanor instead. My mother knew Miss Morrison. Briefly, they corresponded about your education. He touched his hat. I'll leave you to your discoveries. Federal protection remains available if needed. He left with his marshals. The kitchen felt too quiet after so much violence. Mrs. Chen began collecting broken dishes, muttering in Chinese. Liza held the key like fragile glass. I'm afraid. Of what's inside? Rowan asked. Of what it changes. What if I learn things that... She stopped. What if I'm not who I thought? You're exactly who you've always been. Just might understand it better. She looked at him, then at the key. Slowly, she lifted the locket. The key slid in smooth, turned with a tiny click. The locket opened. Inside, a photograph no bigger than a thumbnail. A woman with dark curls and Liza's eyes. And tucked behind it, a strip of paper covered in strange letters. Hebrew, Mrs. Chen said, looking over her shoulder. It's a blessing. For daughters. Liza traced the letters. She was Jewish. My mother was Jewish. Explains Pike's interest, Teresa said. There are men who think foreign blood means weakness, easier to control. He was wrong. Yes, Liza said soft. He was. She closed the locket gentle, but didn't lock it. The key went on the chain beside Rowan's makeshift one. 2 keys now, one for locks that mattered, one for the promise of opening. Thank you, she said to the room, to the memory of Miss Morrison, to the mother who left blessings hidden. Thank you all. Mrs. Chen snorted. Don't thank yet. You still need somewhere to go. Something to do. Freedom's just the first step. I know someone in California, Teresa offered. Runs a newspaper for immigrants. Always needs people who understand multiple worlds. Or stay here. Mrs. Chen said, I could use help. Too many girls coming through who need what you learned. How to survive. How to choose. Liza looked at Rowan. What do you think? I think it's your choice. First of many. She smiled then. Full and real. Yes, it is. The afternoon sun slanted through windows, painting the kitchen gold. Outside, the hired guns were gone. The Prescotts retreating. Pike's authority crumbling. Inside, a woman sat with her history finally open, surrounded by people who saw her truly. Not property, not asset, not anyone's to control. Just Eleora Quinn, choosing her path one free step at a time. 1 month later, the Rio Grande ran low and muddy between its banks. Rowan worked a young gelding in the riverside corral, teaching it to respond to leg pressure instead of harsh bits. The horse was coming along trust building, slow but steady. "He's looking better," Liza called from the fence. She wore a simple cotton dress now, blue as desert sky. Her hair hung in a single braid, no longer pinned tight in propriety. The locked locket rested open against her throat, catching morning light beside the makeshift key that started it all. "He's learning," Rowan said, guiding the horse through another turn. "Just needed someone to show him there's another way." She smiled at that, understanding the layers. This past month had been about learning other ways for both of them. Her, discovering what life looked like without locked doors. Him, remembering what it felt like to stay in one place, to build something besides distance. Mrs. Chen had offered them both work, Liza helping with the boarding house, Rowan handling horses for travelers and teaching riding to local children. Good work. Honest work. Work that let them choose daily to remain. "Letter came," Liza said, pulling an envelope from her pocket. "From Judge Morrison." Rowan brought the horse to the fence, dismounted smooth. "What's it say?" "Pike fled to Mexico. Won't be coming back. The woman in Missouri is filing for proper divorce." She folded the letter careful. "Also says 3 more women came forward. From other towns. Seems Pike had a pattern going back years." "They safe?" "Judge arranged protection. New starts." She touched the locket. "Like he did for us." A comfortable quiet settled between them. These silences had become common, not empty, but full of things that didn't need saying. How she'd started teaching Hebrew letters to some of the boarding house girls. How he'd been setting aside money, thinking about that small ranch he'd once dreamed of. "I've been thinking," she said, "about names, about choosing." He waited, knowing she'd find her way to it. "I want to be Eliora again, not Eliza, not Mrs. Anybody." She met his eyes. "Just Eliora Quinn, writing her own story. It's a good name, strong name. My mother chose it, means God is my light, but I think maybe it means finding your own light too." She paused. "What do you think about adding to it someday, when I'm ready, when it's my choice complete?" His heart did something complicated in his chest. "What kind of adding?" "The kind that comes with promises, not ownership, not papers saying who belongs to who, just promises between people who choose each other free and clear." He reached through the fence, took her hand gentle. "I think that sounds like something worth waiting for, worth doing right. Even if the waiting takes time. Especially then, best things usually do." She squeezed his fingers. "Teresa's starting a school for girls who need to learn they have choices." She asked if I'd help teach. "You going to?" "I think so. Feels like passing on what Miss Morrison gave me, what you gave me." She smiled. "What I gave myself. Finally." The horse nudged Rowan's shoulder, looking for attention. He laughed, rubbed its neck. "Impatient creature." "He's young. He'll learn better." Eliora released his hand. "I should go. Promised Mrs. Chen I'd help with the noon meal, but tonight." "Tonight?" "There's dancing at the plaza. Harvest celebration." She tilted her head. "Would you come as my chosen companion? Not my anything else." "I'd be honored." She walked back toward the house, pausing at the gate. "Rowan, that Mustang mare you told me about, you really never regretted letting her go." "Never. Seeing her choose free was worth more than having her. But you were alone after. Rather be alone and right than together and wrong." She considered that. What if you could be together and right, both choosing, both free? Then that would be something worth protecting. "Yes," she said soft, "it would." Evening brought lanterns strung between trees, fiddle music floating on river breeze, the plaza filled with people celebrating Mexican farmers, Anglo merchants, travelers passing through. Eliora wore a borrowed skirt that swirled when she turned, flowers tucked in her braid. They danced careful at first, maintaining proper distance, but as the night wore on, as the music grew livelier, that distance shortened natural-like. Her hand in his felt right. The way she laughed when he spun her, that felt right too. "People are watching," she said during a slower song. "Let them. They'll talk about the marshal's runaway wife dancing with the cowboy who stole her. You weren't stolen. You chose. Big difference." She moved closer, just a little. "Some people won't see it that way. Some people need spectacles." That made her laugh again, bright as stars. Around them, other couples swayed to the music. Mrs. Chen watched from the refreshment table, her expression approving. Teresa spun past in the arms of a young newspaperman, both of them grinning wide. "Can I tell you something?" Eliora asked. About fear." "Tell me." "That night at school, when I wrote about Miss Morrison in my journal, what scared the sisters wasn't that I might desire wrongly. It was that I might desire at all, that I might choose based on my own heart instead of their rules. And now I know desire isn't the enemy. Fear of it is." She looked up at him. "I'm not afraid anymore. Rowan, not of wanting, not of choosing, not of being chosen in return." The song ended, but they stayed close. Around them, the celebration continued, children chasing fireflies, old women gossiping on benches, young men showing off for young women who pretended not to notice. "Walk with me," Eliora asked. They left the plaza, wandered down to the river. The water ran dark and quiet, reflecting stars. She found a flat stone to sit on, patted the space beside her. "I have something for you," she said, pulling the makeshift key from around her neck. "This opened more than you know. Think it's time it went home." "Keep it. Reminder of how far you've come." "I don't need reminders. I have reality." She pressed the key into his palm. "Besides, maybe you need unlocking too. Maybe we all have doors we've barred without realizing." He closed his fingers around the warm metal. "What kind of doors?" "The kind that keeps you moving job to job, place to place, never settling, never choosing to stay." She touched his face, gentle as breeze. "What are you running from?" "Rowan Hale." The question sat between them like a third presence. He thought about Sarah, about promises he couldn't keep, about all the people he'd failed to save over the years. "Myself, maybe. The fear that staying means failing someone again." Or maybe staying means finally succeeding, finally being there when it matters. "It's not that simple." "No, but simple's overrated." She stood, brushed dust from her skirt. "I'm going to be here, Rowan, teaching girls to read their own hearts, learning to read mine, building something real. You're welcome to be part of that, or not. Your choice, like always." She started back toward the plaza, then turned. "But choose conscious, not from fear, not from habit. Choose like you taught me to choose, free and clear and honest." He sat by the river after she left, turning the key in his fingers. Upstream, something splashed beaver maybe, or night heron fishing. The ordinary world continuing its ordinary business. He thought about locked doors and patient waiting, about Mustang mares choosing freedom and women choosing their own paths, about the difference between leaving and being left, between solitude and loneliness. When he finally returned to the plaza, the dancing had resumed. Eliora stood with a group of boarding house girls, teaching them some step that had them all laughing. She moved like water, like wind, like someone who'd found her rhythm at last. She saw him watching, smiled that smile that changed everything, held out her hand in invitation. He crossed the plaza, took that offered hand. "I choose to stay," he said quiet, "just for her." "For how long?" "Long as you'll have me, long as we're choosing free." "That could be a considerable time." "I'm counting on it." They danced again as the moon rose full over the Rio Grande. Around them, the community celebrated harvest and survival and the simple joy of being alive. The makeshift key rested in Rowan's pocket beside the few coins he'd saved. Not much, but enough for a start. Enough for two people building something together, one choice at a time. Later, Mrs. Chen would say she knew that night they'd last. Something about how they moved together not like people falling in love, but like people choosing it, deliberate and conscious and unafraid. The locked locket stayed open at Eleonora's throat, its secrets revealed and accepted. The Hebrew blessing her mother left caught lamplight as she spun, pronunciation of hope across years and loss. She was her mother's daughter, her teacher's student, her own woman, all of it, finally, without locks or bars or shame. And if sometimes the ghost of Marshal Pike haunted the edges of their happiness, well, ghosts had no power over people who'd chosen their own light, who'd opened their own doors, who'd learned that the heart, like any wild thing, was most beautiful when it was free. The music played on. They danced until dawn, writing their own story in movement and laughter and the simple revolutionary act of choosing joy. Behind them, the past. Ahead, tomorrow. But tonight was theirs, unbarred and unlimited. A door thrown wide to all the possibilities that waited beyond. Thank you so much for listening to this story from the American Wild West. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss your thoughts on Rowan and Eleonora's journey. If you enjoyed this tale of courage, freedom, and choosing love on your own terms, please subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850 and hit the like button. And if you really want to help more people discover these authentic frontier stories, please click the hype button to share this video with others who appreciate meaningful historical fiction. Until our next adventure in the Old West, keep riding free.